he there?
I don't know. He disappeared last night.
I saw him last night. I saw him this morning.
Yeah, he's not getting up.
I don't know. I tried.
All right. Are we rolling here?
Yeah.
Chaim, come home. Okay. We're holding. Where are we holding?
Read.
Yeah, we're holding on page 52. He said, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba b'tarunya im briosav. Hashem does not come with more than the creation can handle. Mizgalu mer b'chol echad ve'echad lefi kocho yicholasa. And it shines into each and every person in accordance with their own powers and their own abilities. Which means, we were saying before, each person only can serve mikem. Adam ki yakriv mikem. It doesn't say Adam mikem ki yakriv, which would have been the more suitable grammar to explain the laws of the karbanos. When one from amongst you will offer such and such. But rather it says Adam ki yakriv, when one of you will yakriv, which means come close to God, mikem. Mikem bachem hadavar taloi. From you, and in you, the matter depends. Which means that coming close to God is a personal thing, depending on your particular. It doesn't matter on what level you start. We said it matters on your avoda at that moment of bringing whatever place you are close to God. And on the contrary, there's no getting close to God unless you take your specific exact place, whether it's high or low it is, and bring that close to God. So the whole notion of thinking that the work is beyond your means is actually totally misunderstanding the concept of service of God. By definition, the service of God is right at your means, because that's exactly where you need to serve from. And that's the whole thing. Hashem doesn't come b'tarunya im briyosov. He doesn't come asking more than you can handle, which means he's asking you only to serve, and that it's the best possible service you can do, to serve from the exact place that you are. Remember we said the whole mashal yesterday about the guy. Your service is only worthwhile if it's lefi erech hanevad, if it's in accordance with the one you're serving. So, but Hashem is not asking us to serve Him on the level where He is, and to do a service which can be considered good in His eyes. It's impossible to do such a thing. Even Moshe Rabbeinu can't do such a thing. But He's asking us to serve from our perspective, that from wherever we are, to take a step forward. And thank God, that's all He's asking of us. And therefore, that's called truly coming close to God. The east of Midrash Rabbah, we said this yesterday. When I ask, I'm only asking according to your powers, not according to what I expect. If it was for myself, what I need. In accordance with the powers of each and every person, the al yidei zeh, and through this, then obviously it's within the power of every single person to elevate and to reach the highest of levels. Because what is the highest of levels? Coming close to God. It doesn't matter if you're Moshe Rabbeinu or if you're you or me, coming close to God is the goal. And he's saying here that it doesn't matter what level you're on, Hashem is asking you from your place to come close to God. And therefore every single person can reach the highest level of coming close to God. Another way of talking about it is the notion that we just spoke a second ago about the idea of there's a different level of light in the head than there is in the foot. But when a person does a mitzvah, it doesn't matter if you're doing the mitzvah with his head or the mitzvah with his foot. Either one. There's mitzvahs that you do with the feet, there's mitzvahs that you do with the head. But either way, you're going to do a mitzvah with your foot or with your head, the light that you draw down is a light which far supersedes either the light or the head equally. Either the foot or the head equally. Which means that the foot can reach the highest level much, much higher than the head, as long as it does what it's supposed to do. Right? And the head, even though it's on the highest level, if it does what it's supposed to do, it reaches a level which is completely incomparable to where it is, because there's a different form of light. Like we were saying in a second ago, there's a light particularly that goes into each body part, and there's the general life force, or the will, which totally is on a different plane than any of the particulars. So when you do a mitzvah, when you do the avodah, it's kafin, it's hapcha, you reach into a different light. And therefore, it doesn't matter where you start, because what you're accessing is totally incomparable to any level, not only your level. And therefore, even the lowest guy can reach the highest levels.
When you say incomparable, when you do a mitzvah with your feet,
Yeah.
I do a mitzvah with my feet, those are comparable, no?
Those are comparable, yeah, but neither of them are they're both in a realm which is completely beyond comprehension. The whole notion of a mitzvah is that it's a level of light which is totally beyond comprehension, because comprehension is intellect, and that's the first of the levels. So we tap into the mitzvah
So
light.
what are we meant to learn from that? That the mitzvah is so high that we can't even measure it, that we shouldn't even consider whether or not it's worth doing. It's so high.
That's for sure. Yes, but we're saying we didn't get to it yet. But the idea of mitzvahs, what he's saying is the avodah is skafi and hapcha, this subjugation and transformation, which is basically the avodah of Torah and mitzvahs, right? In short, and when you do this, when you tap into that, you're tapping into something which is so high that it defies the concept of high and low. Meaning to say that there's a Moshe Rabbeinu and there's a you, right? And that's high and low, right? But the mitzvah is so high that it makes Moshe Rabbeinu and you to a certain degree the same. It's completely
Right,
beyond.
so my mitzvah can be just as high as Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yes, in principle.
Right.
Now, I don't want you to get confused because there's a sikha from the Rebbe over here. This was Korach's claim, actually. Korach said, Kulam Kadoshim. He said, what do you mean? Now that you told us that the mitzvahs like defy the difference between high and low, so why do we need a Moshe Rabbeinu anymore? We're all holy. We can all tap into this light. Which is, he has a claim. In other words, there's something to it. It's a claim al pi Torah. He got 250 of this Rosh Sanhedrin to go along with him. It's not, he wasn't a dummy. But the difference is that is true, but it's sort of like saying that.
Why was it wrong then?
Because the idea is that it says which is greater, Torah or mitzvahs. So in a certain sense, Torah is the union of something which encloses itself into intellect. Torah, to a certain degree, puts itself into the boundaries of high and low, right? You have different levels of Torah, greater levels of intellect. You can't say, like a mitzvah, that everyone is equally obligated is the same as Torah, because Torah, not everyone is equally obligated. Some people who work, they're yotzi with perek echad, b'shachris, right? And ba'aris.
Also, for a mitzvah.
Also, depending on how smart you are, or how old you are, your level of understanding Torah changes your obligation. Because if you are able to learn the deeper secrets, then you have to. If you're able to learn Gemara Be'iyun, then you have to. So your obligation to learn Torah is not unified like it is with mitzvahs. Whereas everyone has to just mekayim the mitzvah, right? So the idea is, they asked, what's greater? Torah mitzvah. They say, right? They amdu v'nimnu. They stood up in the academy one day and they asked, what's greater, Torah mitzvahs? And what was the answer? Torah shemevi udei mitzvah. Right? They said Torah is greater because it brings you to mitzvahs. So they kind of mixed it all together. And what's the idea? Is that ultimately mitzvahs are greater. Right? Because what is Torah good for? Torah is only good because it brings you to the mitzvahs. So that's the idea that Korach's claim is true. In other words, when you get to this level of light which defies boundaries between high and low, which we said is the difference between mitzvahs and Torah. Torah is already still in the realm of the ishtalshlus to a certain degree, because there's some that are higher and some that are lower. And Moshe Rabbeinu, for example, was the highest. So Moshe Rabbeinu's being the highest is only relevant on the realm when you're talking about high and low, but in the realm of a light which is beyond high and low, that's where Korach's claim kicks in. He said, great Moshe Rabbeinu, no one's doubting that you're number one in Torah, but you just taught us, Chassid is basically, that the main thing is to go to a light which is beyond high and low, which is mitzvahs. So now that we're all about mitzvahs, so then who needs Moshe Rabbeinu? So this is the same claim, like ultimately why is Torah greater? Because it brings to mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is the highest thing. But nonetheless they ruled and they voted Torah is greater because it brings you to mitzvahs. Which means that yes, it's true that to access that highest light, it's the highest thing you can do. But to get there, right, you still need to access that through the realm of Seder Mishtalshlus. In other words, to access it through the light, which is the limited light, which is the Indian of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the Indian of Torah. There's other reasons also he says over there, which is just that even in the deed itself, even though the one person putting on tefillin is similar to the other person, whether you're Moshe Rabbeinu or not, but there's a certain purity of the goof and a certain refinement of the machshav and everything that goes into the actual physicality as well. And for there's also a difference. Okay, but anyway, in principle, without getting into all that, in principle, it's true that whether you're Moshe Rabbeinu or whether you're a simple person, with the light that you access with the mitzvah defies both of you equally, and that's the lesson we're supposed to learn from this. Someone had a question? No.
Can you just say the last half of the last sentence?
The idea is that whether you're Moshe Rabbeinu or whether you're a simple person, tapping into what he's talking about now, which is a light which defies up and down, high and low, gets you to a place which is higher than either of you. In other words, so a simple person, depending on, even if you're the lowest stage, you can access a light which is beyond even Moshe Rabbeinu. Which means what? How does it come out from what he's saying here? Hashem doesn't put something upon you which you can't handle. And since he's telling you basically to bring forth something called Adam Ki Yakri, to come close to God, right? There's a commandment, we're supposed to come close to God, which is, so to speak, bring an offering, but really means to come close to God. How am I supposed to come close to God? I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu. Let him go close to God. He's on the mountain over there. I'm sure he can pull it off. You're asking me? So the point is, when it comes close to God, we're talking about drawing a light which defies everybody, Moshe Rabbeinu and me equally. That I can get it as much as he can. Because that's a light which is, he has no special access to this light. It's totally beyond the realm of high and low. How do you do it? Specifically from the standpoint and the boundaries of where you are. If you tried to be Moshe Rabbeinu, you couldn't get it. You have to specifically be you, with all your limitations, with your exact level where Hashem put you right now. And utilizing those powers where you are. That's the only way to get to that light. So by being specific, so a person can't say, "How am I going to get close to God? I'm not high enough." On the contrary, you can't get close to God unless you're exactly who you are. But if you serve from who you are, you can get close to God in a level which is higher, so to speak, than Moshe Rabbeinu's level, because you go into a light which defies high and low. Now, it doesn't mean that Moshe Rabbeinu can't also do it from his level as well. He can also access that light. But I'm saying, this is where we're sort of starting to clarify for ourselves the difference between Or Mamali and Or Sovic. The Or Mamali is the idea of it's divided into high and low. And the Or Sovic is completely beyond that. Whether you're high or whether you're low, you have access to it, because you have to just sort of activate it from your own particular position. When you do, you bring this light equally and unanimously into all the worlds. And that's the union of Kuhu Almi that we discussed. Yeah? You following, more or less? Less. Okay. You had your coffee? All right, well, can't blame me then. Okay. Okay, so what are, but honestly, does anyone have any questions on this? You understand what we're saying? We said sort of the same thing many times in more and more confusing language, potentially.
Could by doing mitzvahs, a person, irrespective of how intrinsically intelligent they are, by doing mitzvahs, Hashem allows you more access to the Torah, deeper, on a higher level.
Yeah, I would say so.
Doesn't every morning we say Hashem teaches us?
I mean, there's the union of, Nasiv and Nishma, right? So the whole idea is, the simple meaning is, we'll do and then we'll understand, and then we'll listen. But the truth is that there's a secret to it. If you do, then you will understand. In other words, you'll get more grasp of the Torah by first just doing without understanding, if you don't understand, because it sort of broadens your vessels. In other words, what's the effect, basically, when the foot ushers in this light which is beyond the Seder Shtalshus? What happens to the foot, right? It becomes broader vessel. It transforms the foot. It slowly, it actually brings...
When the foot does a mitzvah?
When the foot does a mitzvah...
But the foot doesn't know that.
No, but the foot slowly...
Because we've all done mitzvahs, and I don't feel like I did any, touched into this light.
No, but you are a completely different person today than you were, let's say, X amount...
Before the mitzvah. Okay, granted.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
You don't feel it.
You don't feel it, but you. That's what I'm trying to say. You slowly start, what you do feel, in other words, the parts of you which you can feel, which is the Or Panimi, it starts to be more and more expansive what that can feel. Your consciousness expands, even though you're drawing down an unfathomable consciousness, which you can never. Right. But as that comes into you, the parts of you which bear understanding bear more and more and more understanding. That's what we're
Is that what
trying to
you're
say.
saying, that eventually your will will change, like your will will expand? Like your will is only over here, but once you do more mitzvot, all of a sudden,
No, your
without
will-
noticing, your will will...
Your will doesn't change, right? The will is like, but what changes is the light that does go into vessels. Like you can be this smart, you can be this smart, right? So or even the foot. The foot can bear a certain measure of understanding because like my foot and like some talented soccer player's foot have completely different intelligence inside of them, right? All my foot does is walk and trip, right? His foot is like dances, right? So there's intelligence in the foot. So the more will you generate into the overriding system, which nobody feels the will, but suddenly the kelim themselves are more and more talented. They're more and more expansive. Even the low. That's what it says in the end of days. It says, all flesh will see the glory of God. It doesn't say all eyes will see. It says all flesh will see, which means it will get to a point that even the lower physical vessels will expand themselves to be able to contain the light of the more sophisticated vessels that your foot will see, right? Because why can't your foot see now? Because there's a Seder Ishtalshlus, whereas the high one can see and the bottom one can't see. But when the whole thing elevates, then the high one will do something completely beyond the sight of the high one will be like super magnified, and the lower one will just see. Right? There'll still be a difference between high and low, but the whole low will keep going up.
That's the effect of bringing down
The Silkis light. Yeah. Well, it's game for L'chaim. You guys have any left from the chess game last night?
No, we finished it.
Okay.
About an hour.
That's why you guys were half an hour late. Okay, let's go weiter. V'zeu Adam ki yakriv. And this is what it means, a man, when he will come close, in order for a person to come close to God, it's from you, that within you, the matter depends. Where you are. This is the vort, right? It's a very empowering vort. And that's what it says in the pasuk, mikem Karban LaHashem. From you is an offering to God. The mikem takrivu es karbanan LaHashem. Es a karban LaHashem. That from you is what you have to bring close your carbon to God. The ein hakavana raka karban shel behema belvad. That it is not here the intentions just the carbon of the physical animal alone in the pasuk. Kim mikem mamish. The verse is talking to you actually. Right? Because again, we said that these verses, there's no reason that you have to read them according to what it seems the pshat is talking about an animal. Adam ki yakriv mikem karban LaHashem. Where does it say animal over there? Right? It's not only on one level. It's talking about an animal. Another level, the same exact words literally are saying when a person comes close to God, it has to come from you. V'hu mina behema. Oh, so then what? It does say behema in the next part of the verse. So it says hu mina behema ha behema shebalibo shalado. It doesn't mean mamish bringing in, even when you get the word behema thrown into the mix, it doesn't mean a behema mamish. It means, it just told me that it's talking about from me. Then it goes to specify what part of you? From your behema. From the behema in the heart of man.
The animal soul.
The animal soul. Yeah, well, the whole, it's everywhere. The behema you're enclosed in it. But yes, when he says the behema in the heart of man, it means the left side of the heart. Shu ha-nefesh ha-bahamis, which is the animal soul, which your godly soul is enclosed in. So now he's getting very specific. If you want to come close to God, he's not saying you should bring your godly soul close by it doing something. No, it then goes on to tell you this spiritual service is that mina behema. It says you have to bring your animal to God. Mina bakar mina tzon. Whether your behema is from the cattle or the flock. And what is the cattle or the flock? Why is this being so specific? Because it's telling you that not everybody has the same animal. The cattle and the flock are the different levels that there are in the nefesh bahamis. As it's known the matter here. It's not comparable. The manner of refinement in each and every person. The yeshno nefesh bahamis shelo. There is such a situation that is nefesh bahamis of the guy who's shur nagach. He's a goring ox. Ubal midos gasos biyoser, and he has very coarse midos. V'yeshu tzon, and there's another guy who's a little sheep. Shu behema daka. He's a little animal. Av shegam ze bichlal behema, but it's also called an animal. What you think? Because he's a gentle animal. He's not an animal. It's a different kind of an animal. Abahu bedaka sal kol panim, but it's like a little bit more of a. He's not a coarse kind of bull in a china shop situation kind of an animal. He's not going to stomp all over you. He's edel. But what, you think he's not an animal? You think he's eating for the sake of God? He's eating grass because he's hungry. That's it. He's also an animal.
You ever seen a bull in a china shop?
Have you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, no, because he was a Hasidic bull. You should have seen him before that. As all this explained at great length in the Rebbe Rashab. Dakos is refined, like thin, literally. But dakos is meaning he's still an animal, but it's a gentle animal. Al kopanim is at least, or al kopanim is interesting translation. At least, I think. And that's what it says, that you shall offer your carbon. In other words, the verse finishes by saying that you will offer your sacrifice. So what does that mean? So, I think that's already a period over there, which means karban chem means to say that it's plural. So when it says mina behim minatzon, that you shall plural offer your sacrifice, that's why it doesn't say in a lashon yachid. It says already that he recognized when you're going to bring your offering. It's talking to a group. Your carbon is not. Everyone does not have the same carbon, right? Depending on what kind of an animal you have. Dehine ba carbon hagashmi. So when it comes to the physical carbon, you bring your physical animal onto the offering. And remember, where are we going with this? The whole thing is that we're coming from the standpoint of we're making ourselves into a mikdash. Right? So Hashem can dwell within us. Just like the original tzaddikim that brought the Shekhinah down to earth, they did something called a skafi and izhabcha, which enabled them to draw the Shekhinah into the world, which is this idea of this ratzon, this level of soving. And we're saying, since that private directive to me comes from talking about a mikdash, so then we're going to look in the mikdash and see what happened there, because they did the same thing this time. And then we started off with the carbon, and the carbon it's the same thing. It's telling me mamash to bring my nefesh bahamis into the picture. Now he's going further into it to discuss what the actual carbon was. First of all, it was a physical animal on a physical altar, and in addition to that, via eish shelamayla, there was a fire from heaven that came down to consume it. The Isa B'Yoma says in the Gemara, Revutze Ka'ari, it says it was crouching like a lion. What was crouching like a lion? Gacheles Shanaflu Min HaShamayim, a coal that fell from heaven. B'Yemei Shlomo, when they first made the altar, a coal fell from heaven. B'Hai Salam Mizbeach, and was sitting on the Mizbeach. That's one of the concepts, that there was a fire from heaven. It's heavenly.
Gachelet.
Uvezoar isa arni da'achil kurbani. And in the Zohar, the fire from heaven was a whole different kind of fire from heaven. It was literally every time they would offer a sacrifice, there was a lion of fire that came out of the sky and ate the carbon. So we see that no matter alpi pshat, alpi drush, so there's a fire from heaven involved with the sacrifice. The lion is fire, made out of fire. He doesn't say that here, but that's what it was. It's the lion that ate the karbanos. It was a fire came out of heaven if your carbon was accepted. It didn't come. No, then it would just get burned on the regular altar. Lion. the achil that eats korban. Yeah. So we see that there's a physical animal on the altar, but there's also this fire from heaven. So he says, "Hine kamo kein hu ba'avoda b'nefesh ha'adam." So it is in the service of the soul of man. There's also a fire from heaven. Yesh eish milamat shelamayla. There's also, in other words, everything is a parallel. So we also have the physical animal, so to speak, which is our nefesh bahamas, whether it's a buck or its own. And then we also have this fire from heaven which comes to consume it. And what is that? That's the burning love of God that's found in the godly soul. As it says, it burns with the burning flame of Yud K. The East of Midrash Rabbah, Ke'esh Shalamayla. Right? So what is it? What is this burning flame that Shlomo Melech is talking about? That there's the flame of Yud K, which is inside of a person. He says Ke'esh Shalamayla. It's like a fire from heaven. Meaning what? She'ena eish mechama l'mayim. Bein hamayim machmin la'eish. What is a fire from heaven? A fire from heaven is not a physical fire, it's a spiritual fire, whereby the fire is not put out the water and the water is not put out the fire. So what he's basically saying is that this fire, everything that happened in the base of Mikdash exactly is happening to us. They had the physical animal they brought on the altar, and then they had this heavenly fire. What is the heavenly fire? So the heavenly fire was some kind of a fire that ate the carbon, but he's saying that the godly soul is also called a heavenly fire. What's the definition of a heavenly fire? It doesn't go out with water. In other words, it's a fire that cannot be extinguished inside of our godly soul. And this fire, when you offer the sacrifice and your sacrifice is accepted, so what's the response? Is that a heavenly fire of your godly soul, like this untapped love of God that's intrinsic inside of you, comes out and reveals itself and, so to speak, consumes your sacrifice. What are we talking about here? When a person actually does the avodah of bringing his animal close to God, from wherever standpoint you're holding, and you bring yourself close to God, and you put yourself on the altar, and you sacrifice yourself in whatever way, you unleash the love of your godly soul. It comes, so to speak, and consumes that sacrifice. That's what it lives off of. It can't come out and come down from heaven and show the heavenly fire of your godly soul unless it's consuming some type of sacrifice, which is that you bring your animal soul close to God and give of yourself to the altar of God from your animal. Then it reveals your godly soul. You got to give up your ego and everything else.
And all the egos.
What's
Let
that?
go my ego.
That's right. What's that? To extinguish.
Let go
Yeah.
my ego.
What's that?
You're early enough.
Yeah.
It is. You told me I have to kill myself.
You have to kill yourself?
Myself.
Yeah. Okay.
Not
You're
God,
taking
myself.
Just have a pause between mine.
Okay. Don't kill yourself.
Are you sure?
I'm saying while you're busy killing yourself, don't kill yourself.
Yeah.
V'hainu shebeteva hanefesh elokis. It's like I told Hanan, what was it? It was late one night. We were bringing it to like 4 o'clock in the morning all together. So he writes me at 7:15 is their class. I said, don't kill yourself. So it came at 7:35 instead of 7:30. V'hainu shebeteva hanefesh elokis, which means it's the nature of the godly soul. In other words, the godly soul, it's already its nature to love God with this burning fire and love of God. And this is example of a fire from heaven, a spiritual fire where water does not extinguish it. It means it never goes out. It's a natural burning flame which can never be put out. It's the godly soul's, it's called a shayal lebes yudke. It's called a flame because it's constantly, by nature, burning to rejoin its source. So, we talked about this is its nature. Even if you put it underwater, all it does is keep burning. Hamayim hem mayim rabbi. So we talked about this also in Parshas Noach. What are the waters that may try to put out this fire? They're called the mayim rabbi, the mighty waters, which is riboy hatardos b'tirdos aparnasa, ubilbulim shonim. This is the multiplicity of burdens. B'tirdos aparnasa, with the burden of making a living, ubilbulim shonim, and just different confusions. B'tirdos shonim, and different burdens, hamebalbulim b'torah v'avoda, which confuse you in Torah and avoda. So every second there's going to be a phone call, there's going to be a this, there's going to be a that, there's going to be everything. And these are called the mighty waters, which are trying to disturb you from the service that you were trying to serve God. Like the flood waters of Noach, we said. Drown the whole world. Mebalbel means to confuse. So he says, nonetheless, they can't extinguish the love, like we talked about in the times of Parshas Noach. What do? All they do is push the teva, where we said teva is teva satafila. The teva means the words of prayer. And those waters which tried to extinguish the whole world, the only thing they succeeded in doing is lifting the teva satafila off the earth. They can't extinguish the love of God. On the contrary, the more they come, the stronger the love gets. Because it can't go out, when you try to put it out, its reaction is even more love. Burdens. Shonim is different. Bilbulim shonim, different bilbulim. You got the words? And with all these mayim rabbi, he's quoting the pasuk. All these mighty waters, nonetheless, rivers cannot wash it away. The rishpe eish ha'ava, because the burning fire of love, shebenefesh ha'elokis, in the godly soul, hu bedugmas eish shelamayla. It's an example of a heavenly fire. De'eina mayim machabinosa, that water cannot extinguish it. Ubezeh tzrich lios hakrava shel nefesh bahamis. And in order to get this fire to come out, you need first to offer your sacrifice from the animal soul. Where did this fire come out? The Eish Shalamayla, the Pashtus, whether it's a coal, whether it's a lion of fire, whether it's the godly soul. When did it come out? Only after the animal was sacrificed, the physical animal. First, you have to start with your Nefesh Bahamis. Shagam hu lo avalelukus. And what do you mean? That first you have to make the animal soul love God. And that's what it means, bringing your animal to the altar. Your animal would rather be grazing in the fields, just sort of enjoying himself. The whole notion that you're going to make a situation where you're going to bring your animal to the altar is that in the realm of this little animal, he himself is going to come to realize the love of God. How do you do that? As far as I know, only with Chassidus. Right? You can explain to your physical, gross self, basically, that God is better. So it's a philosophical thing, really. You need to convince it in a language that it understands. That he'd rather be sitting in front of a mimer than whatever else he was doing. That's a powerful thing, because there's a lot of things he'd rather be doing. So to come and to explain to him that he himself loves God, that's what it means to bring your animal to the altar. That's what it means to train your animal to be a part of a godly service as opposed to just being a natural animal.
The animal doesn't necessarily, want to get offered, right?
He does. He wants to get offered if he thinks it's good for him.
Yeah, but if you're taking the animal to an altar, then he's not going to be too excited. Right?
That's not true. It says, sometimes they would say that when they were going to shecht animals, because the animal also is a creation of God, it sort of comes to it lines up in front of the shochet, like in a very docile way, because really they know that they're ultimately trying to, I think even the pashtus, I've never seen it happen. Yeah. Yeah. What does it say? Like lambs to the slaughter. They just line up. When you start slaughtering, they line up. Okay, the pashtus is because they just follow each other.
It goes running.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially maybe, but I don't think most animals are lining up to get slaughtered, are they?
I think it depends. In other words, for example,
Wouldn't they want to maybe some?
I'll tell you, for example, let me give you an example. I'll give you an example.
To the world,
No, but let me give you an example. They're never interested in godliness for its own sake. That's not within the animal.
Right.
they're interested only in themselves. Even when they're going to the slaughter, they're interested only in themselves. But there's a self-interest in God as well. And that's what it means that before you unleash this godly love, which is just not having anything to do with the world, it's love of God for its own sake, which is the fire from heaven, first you must get the animal to love God for its own self.
How do you do that?
For example, it's very simple. Would an ox rather be tamed and working in the field